She stormed right up to the wooden gate like she owned the whole mountain and screamed, "Open it now!" My guests are waiting. This entire cabin is mine tonight. I froze for a second, not because I believed her, but because I had never seen someone so bold in my own driveway. Behind her, 2 vans idled with people peeking out the windows, confused, while she waved a clipboard in the air like it was the law itself. I told her calmly, "This cabin is mine, reserved under my name and nobody else's." But she laughed, like I was the one trespassing, and barked, "I'm the HOA event coordinator, and you're breaking community rules. Step aside before I call the sheriff." I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't move. My daughter tugged on my sleeve from behind the porch, whispering, "Dad, is she going to take our cabin?" That single line cut deeper than her yelling. Karen leaned against the gate, smirking, and called out to the vans, "Don't worry, everyone, this man won't be here much longer. The police are on their way." I raised my phone and hit record, staring right at her, and said, "Good, let's see who they put in handcuffs today." For a split second, her face twitched, like she realized she might have overplayed her game, but she doubled down. "You don't understand," she hissed, waving the clipboard again. "I have the reservation for 100 people. This place is mine for the weekend. You better pack your things." The truth was, I already knew something she didn't. The cabin deed had been in my family for 30 years, and in my truck, locked in a safe, was the document that could end this little performance in one move. But I didn't rush. I wanted her to dig her own grave word by word, because the deeper she went, the sweeter the humiliation would be when the truth came out. Here's the viral line from this section. She told me to leave my own land, and that's when I started recording. Karen's voice grew louder, as if the louder she shouted, the truer her lies became. "This man is trespassing.
He's squatting on private property."
She bellowed at the 2 vans of guests now stepping out in confusion. Some of them actually believed her because she wore a fake badge on her jacket that read HOA coordinator. One lady from the van asked nervously, "Ma'am, are you sure this is the right cabin?" Karen snapped back, "Of course. I booked it months ago. He's just trying to scam us." I held back a laugh. "Scam? On my own land?" I let her keep talking because the more she ranted, the more proof I had on video. My daughter whispered, "Dad, are the police really coming?" I looked at her and said softly, "If they come, sweetheart, it won't be me they take away." Within minutes, Karen had dialed 911 and was fake crying into the phone. "Yes, officer. This man is threatening me and blocking access to my cabin. Please hurry, I have over 100 guests stranded." Her fake tears would have won her an Oscar if I didn't already know the truth. I stayed silent, recording every second. Then, to my shock, a security car rolled up the dirt road. Karen threw her arms in the air, shouting, "Yes! Right here, arrest him now." She looked so sure of herself that even some of her guests clapped. But when the guard stepped out, I recognized him immediately. It was Frank, a retired Marine buddy of mine who now worked part-time in community security. He looked at me, then at Karen, and his jaw tightened. Karen pointed at me like I was a criminal. "That's him. Take him away before he hurts someone." Frank didn't move toward me. Instead, he walked slowly to Karen and asked, "Ma'am, can I see your official HOA documents for this property?" She stuttered, fumbling with her clipboard, shoving random papers at him. Frank didn't even glance at me. He just said flatly, "Funny, because I know exactly who owns this cabin, and it's not you." Karen's smirk cracked. Her guests shifted uneasily, some even whispering. But she still tried to push back. "He's lying. He's his friend. This is a conspiracy." That's when I finally spoke, looking her dead in the eye. "You picked the wrong man, Karen, and now everyone's about to know it." Viral line for this section. She called security on me, but the man who stepped out was my war buddy. Karen's face went pale, but her mouth never stopped moving. "This is fraud. You're both in on it. I'll have you reported to the county," she shrieked, waving her clipboard like it was a weapon. Frank crossed his arms and gave me a look that said, "Keep calm. I've got this." He turned back to her and asked, "Ma'am, do you know the name on the deed of this cabin?" Karen blinked, then tried to bluff. "Of course I do. It's, the HOA's name. We manage this whole area." I couldn't resist anymore. I pulled out the small black folder I had brought from my truck earlier, slid the papers out and held them high for everyone to see. "This cabin," I said slowly, letting every word land, "has been in my family since 1993. The deed is right here. Signed, sealed, recorded in the county clerk's office. Karen lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers out of my hand. But Frank stepped between us. "Touch him again and you'll regret it," he warned. The guests behind her gasped, some already pulling out their phones to record. For the first time, her little army of supporters looked embarrassed. One man muttered, "Wait, did we just get scammed?" Karen spun on them like a cornered animal. "No, don't listen to him. He forged those papers. He's dangerous. We need to—" Her rant cut off when blue lights flickered down the road. The sheriff's cruiser rolled up slowly, dust rising behind it. Karen's fake confidence returned instantly. She plastered on a victim smile and shouted, "Thank God you're here. Arrest this intruder immediately." The sheriff stepped out, hand resting casually on his belt, and glanced between us. Karen ran to him, tugging at his sleeve like a child. "This criminal is squatting on my property. I demand you throw him in jail." But before the sheriff could answer, Frank spoke with authority. "Sheriff, this is private land. I can vouch for it. This woman is lying." I raised my phone, still recording, and added, "I've got every second of her threats on video. Want to see?" The sheriff's eyes narrowed, and suddenly Karen's voice cracked with panic. She knew her little show was starting to collapse. Viral line for this section. She screamed for the sheriff to arrest me. But I had the deed in the camera. Karen's smile cracked the moment the sheriff asked, "The simplest question, ma'am. What's your legal proof of ownership here?" She shoved the clipboard into his hands with a dramatic flair, but the sheriff didn't even pretend to take it seriously. He flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing. "These aren't property records," he said flatly. "This is a catering receipt and a guest list." The crowd of people she had brought along erupted in whispers. Some were angry now. A woman in the back shouted, "You made us drive 2 hours for nothing?" Karen spun around, desperate to regain control. "Don't believe him. They're working together to cheat all of you." Her voice was shaky now, cracking under the weight of her own lies. The sheriff walked toward me, glanced at my folder, and nodded slowly after scanning the deed. "This checks out. Sir, this cabin belongs to you." He turned back to Karen with a look of quiet disappointment. "And you? Have some explaining to do." Karen's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. No. You don't understand. The HOA gave me permission. I'm in charge here," she insisted. But I stepped forward, holding my phone just inches from her face, and said calmly, "You just lied to law enforcement on video. You impersonated an HOA authority. That's a felony, Karen." The sheriff didn't move, but the weight of his silence made Karen stumble backward. Some of her guests had already started walking back to their vans, shaking their heads. The woman who yelled earlier spat out, "You scammed us and we're calling our lawyer." For the first time, Karen's confidence completely shattered. She tried to bolt toward her car, muttering something about getting her lawyer too. But Frank stepped in her path. His voice was like steel. "Not this time." Viral line for this section. Her clipboard was nothing but a catering receipt, and the sheriff read it out loud. Karen froze as Frank blocked her path. Her fake authority crumbled in seconds, and now she looked like a cornered thief. The sheriff stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "Ma'am, you've lied to law enforcement, attempted to trespass, and tried to defraud over 100 people. That's not something you walk away from." Karen's hands trembled, but she still tried to talk her way out. "No, you don't understand. I was promised this cabin. The HOA told me it was mine for the weekend." Her excuse fell flat. One of her own guests, a man in a suit, barked back, "That's a lie. I checked the HOA website before coming. This property isn't even listed." More phones were out now, recording every second. The crowd had officially turned on her. I didn't even need to raise my voice. I just said, "Karen, your scam is over. You tried to humiliate me in front of my daughter. Now the truth is humiliating you." My daughter peeked out from the porch again, eyes wide, and whispered to me, "Dad." Everyone sees it now. That single line made every ounce of anger I felt worth it. The sheriff finally nodded to Frank. "Escort her to the cruiser. I'll process her downtown." Karen snapped, "You can't do this to me. I run this community." But Frank leaned close enough that only she and I could hear him and said, "You don't run anything here." As Karen was marched toward the cruiser, the crowd of her abandoned guests began to clap, not for her, but for the justice unfolding right in front of them. One woman said to me, "Sir, I'm sorry we believed her for a second. Thank you for standing your ground." I simply held up the deed and the phone still recording. "The truth doesn't need to shout," I replied. Viral line for this section. She tried to run, but the sheriff called it. Her scam ended in handcuffs. Karen thrashed as Frank guided her toward the cruiser, her voice breaking into a desperate wail. "This is harassment! I'll sue all of you. You can't treat me like a criminal." But the irony was already carved into stone. Her wrists clicked into the cuffs, while every single one of her guests filmed the scene. The very audience she had invited to witness her power trip was now documenting her downfall. The sheriff looked at me once more. "Sir, if you'd like to file formal charges for trespassing, impersonation, or fraud, the DA will be more than happy to review this." His calm tone carried weight. I didn't even hesitate. "I'll file every charge that applies. Nobody threatens my family and gets away with it." My daughter's little hand slipped into mine, squeezing tight as if she finally felt safe again. Karen's face burned red. She twisted her head toward me, shouting, "This isn't over! You think you've won, but you don't know who I am." That made me smirk. I stepped closer to the cruiser window and said in a quiet, steady voice, "Actually, I do know who you are. You're the woman who just got caught lying to the sheriff and the whole internet." The sheriff shut the cruiser door, her shouts muffled now by glass. Some of the scammed guests started demanding refunds, yelling that they would sue her too. One man snapped, "You ruined our entire weekend, Karen. We'll make sure everyone knows what you did." She shrank in her seat, powerless, her fake empire collapsing all around her. I looked at the gathering crowd and said, "You all came here for a party, but what you got was the truth. She played you, but at least now the game is over." Phones lowered. Nods of agreement spread through the group. For the first time since this nightmare started, the mountain air felt light again. Viral line for this section. She called it harassment, but the sound of handcuffs said otherwise. The sheriff's cruiser rolled away slowly, Karen's muffled screams fading down the mountain road. The moment she was gone, silence fell across the cabin grounds. Just the sound of wind moving through the trees and the crunch of gravel under people's shoes. One by one, her guests turned to me with apologetic looks. Some shook their heads. Others muttered about how much money they'd lost. But none of them defended her anymore. Frank gave me a long look, half a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You handled that better than most," he said quietly. "A lot of folks would have lost their cool." I shrugged. She wanted me humiliated in front of my family. Instead, she humiliated herself. My daughter tugged my sleeve again, her voice small but steady. "Daddy, is she going to come back?" I knelt beside her, brushing her hair back. "No, sweetheart. She's not coming back here. This land is ours and nobody can take it away." The relief in her eyes was more powerful than any words the sheriff could have spoken. As people began climbing back into their vans, a man in a suit approached me. He held out his phone. "Sir, I think you should know. The video of her being arrested is already online. It's going viral fast." I couldn't help but chuckle. Karen wanted an audience. She got one, just not the kind she expected. The sunset spilled gold across the cabin porch as Frank clapped me on the shoulder. "You know," he said, "most people don't realize how strong property rights are until someone like her tries to tear them down." I looked out at the land my father had left me and replied, "That's why I'll never let anyone, HOA or not, decide what I can and can't do on my own land." Viral line for this section. She wanted fame and she got it, just in handcuffs and on everyone's phones. The next morning, the mountain air felt different, lighter, calmer, almost like the land itself had been freed from Karen's chaos. My daughter played on the porch steps, humming to herself, no longer afraid someone might show up and steal our home. I brewed coffee and watched the sun stretch across the valley, knowing last night's storm had finally passed. Frank stopped by before heading into town. The sheriff said she's being charged with fraud, trespassing, and impersonating an HOA officer. Looks like she'll be facing real consequences this time. He handed me a folded paper, a copy of the sheriff's incident report. Stamped official. "Thought you'd want this for your records." I stared at the stamp, the proof that everything she tried to twist was now written down in law. "Thanks, Frank," I said, "for standing by me when she tried to spin her lies." He shook his head. "That's what brothers do. Besides, you didn't need me. You had the deed, the proof, and the patience. That's what beat her." Later that day, my phone buzzed nonstop. The video had spread across social media, millions of views overnight. People from all over the country were commenting. Finally, a Karen getting what she deserves. Some even called me a hero. though I never saw myself as one. I was just a father protecting his land and his child. As I tucked my daughter into bed that night, she whispered, "Daddy, you didn't let her win." I kissed her forehead and replied, "Sweetheart, nobody can take from us what's truly ours." And for the first time I felt not just victorious, but proud because the truth had stood taller than every lie she tried to build. Final viral line. I didn't fight for this land, just to be told I couldn't live on it. This cabin is ours, and always will be. The end.